Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems, and with me is Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute.
What is the most important part of making calls? How much research should we do? What is the goal of each call? That's just the beginning of our topic today on call planning. Remember, if they are not hanging up on you, you are not making enough calls, as Bill and I discuss call planning and other important ideas on episode 509 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
All right. Well, I'm excited to talk about this because I think we sometimes do too much planning and not enough calling. So I'm excited about that. Before we get into that, we are back to our book club. That last week we didn't have it because of a guest. We won't have it next week because of a guest. So that gives our listeners time to catch up if they got behind a little bit in the book. The Success Principles, Part 2, Principles 35 through 38. And Principle 35, 99% is a bitch. 100% is a breeze.
Oh, now we got to change our rating on the podcast.
Yeah, now we got to go to adult only.
It's adult only. Okay, yeah. Explicit language. I don't think that word counts though. So I think we're still safe.
What he's saying is be 100% committed, and life is easier. And if you're just kind of touching your toe into things, it can be difficult. And a friend of mine uses an analogy. He says if it's 100 yards across the lake and you only make it 99, you're still dead.
Yeah.
And it's either 100% or not at all to cross the lake.
Yeah.
And 99% there. And then I think he gave some examples. Maybe it was another book I read of if we only had 99% success, 100,000 people would die on the operating table every week, something like that. Right.
Yeah,
so terrible numbers if we're looking for 99% to be good.
Yeah, that is in this book. And one of them is 2 unsafe landings at O'Hare Airport each day.
There you go.
So you go, wow. I mean, that's bringing it home. One sentence I took out of this chapter was just very powerful. And the sentence is, yet you'd be surprised how many people wake up every morning and fight with themselves over whether or not to keep their commitments, stick to their disciplines, and carry out their action plan. And it's so true. It just seems like people have a weight tied to their foot and they just don't get moving. And it's all up to them.
I would say, what action plan?
Well,
but I'm going to get to work and see what happens.
But it starts with getting out of bed.
Yeah.
I mean, the alarm goes off. What do? Do you sit there and simmer? I do. But I also set my alarm, a half hour before I want to get out of bed too. So I do like to kind of take a soft approach to the day and sit in bed and just lay in bed and simmer and just kind of think about the day and the things that I'm looking forward to. And then when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. But commitment is a word that I want to be associated with. If I ever use the exercise, what are 5 words that you want people to describe you in your absence? What would they be? And for me, I want people to use commitment to describe me. And it is the first chapter in my book, Taking Off Into the Wind. And it is really following through on your promises. And when you make commitments.
Yep. Yeah. I would say you should be committed.
Yeah. In some cases I should be, I go, why do I do that to myself? And
but the promises we make.
Right. The discipline that we have. If you listen to any salesperson sit in front of a prospect and say, I guarantee this, I guarantee that, you kind of scratch your head going, I mean, you can't even show up to an appointment on time. And you're going to tell me about all the guarantees that you can make? I have a really tough time believing you. Most of us sell services. A service is only as good as the bearer of the promise, the salesperson making the promise. That's the value and the credibility that the promise bearer has with the prospect. If you can't show up to an appointment on time, how can they believe anything else? It starts there.
People judge us by our actions, not by our words. So what are your actions telling you? All right. The next one, 36, take that away.
Yeah. Learn more and earn more. I love this. I've used this in different sales proposals on working with sales teams on developing greater results through development of the sales team. And I just love the saying. And one thing that I really took away from this is, so there's a line in the chapter, the ones that get it are teachable. They're open to learning. The ones who don't may think they know everything already. You can't teach them a thing. And I've had students that are untrainable, and I've had clients that are uncoachable. You just cannot talk to them. They just go, that's not the way we've done it before. That's not the way we do it around here. Or you're going to have to explain yourself as to how you came up with that idea. And you're giving them good advice and good strategies, but it's outside of their comfort zone and they don't want to try anything new. And those people have a tough time growing.
That's the funniest thing about working with people in consulting, as you and I both know, Scott, is that they're bringing us in to bring in new ideas, and every new idea that we bring in, they say, that's not how we do it here. It's like, well, that's why you brought me in, right? To show you ways that you could do it, that you don't do it here. So I think learn more to earn more is very important, that commitment to lifelong learning. I know I've run into people who they finished school, whether it was high school or college. They said, I'm never picking up a book again, right? I'm never going to, boy, that is, you know what? I went through college. I didn't learn anything there. I better start picking up books after college, because I've learned 2,000 times more by not being in college than I did in college. I think the biggest challenge with college is most of it's taught by college professors who have never been very successful at anything except going to school. So be careful about where you're getting your learning. I'd rather get it from somebody who's been through the fire and made mistakes, like Anthony Iannarino that we talked to last week. So
right.
I was at the club. I like to go to the dry sauna. People often read there. I met a guy who was reading a book. I said, "What are you reading?" Something like Servant Leadership.
Yeah, heard about it.
And he said, "I read it every year."
Wow.
And I said, "Why do you do that?" He goes, "Because I change every year and I learn something new." So absolutely true. I have books like that. I'm sure you do, that I read every year. How to Win Friends and Influence People is one. People would say you haven't caught on yet to, keep reading it. So what are those books that you need to read every year? And then the other thing I'd say to our listeners, if you are listening to us and you haven't picked up The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, and you're just letting us spoon feed it to you and you're not reading it, I think you're making a big mistake. These book clubs are not for us just to spew out our opinions. It's for you to have read the book and play your opinions against ours and be learning on your own. So maybe we're speaking to the choir, but maybe there's people out there that are just too passive. Be aggressive. Grab a book.
Yeah, Bill and I have read many, many books, and we only bring the ones that are most relevant and the best for our listeners, just like the guests that we have on the show. We had Anthony Iannarino last week. Next week, we're going to have Amy Kay on. And I think you're just going to be really impressed with her energy and her content and her delivery. And we only invite guests on that we invite. I mean, we get a lot of invites or a lot of requests for people to be on the show, and we pick the people. So we want to deliver the best. The books are one, the guests are another. I want to just add one more thing onto this chapter. And you talked about college and change and people that graduate from college and they have this attitude of, I know everything I need to know. I mean, is that ignorant? I think that's ignorant. And what they're really saying is, what I don't know doesn't matter. And change begins with wonder. And if people don't have wonder, there's no reason to change. And when you're talking with a prospect about making a change, it needs to begin with wonder. And you need to be able to plant that seed or get, kind of develop the crack in the wall in order to get them to think about things different and wonder what it would be like to work with you. We'll move on to the next chapter, number 37. Stay motivated with the masters. What'd you take away from that one, Bill?
Well, this is where he talks about listening to audios from people who have been there before. Tony Robbins, all of our guests, as Scott said, we pick the best guests. So those are masters in the business. We certainly don't consider ourselves masters. Scott and I are learning all the time. I really like the story of Jeff Arch that he told about, the screenwriter of Sleepless in Seattle, who was running a dojo as a black belt, wasn't doing what he thought he wanted to do, watched a late night audio presentation, I think a Tony Robbins thing, and decided to get it, and it changed his life. He decided, I've always wanted to be a screenwriter. I'm going to do that. And he wrote Sleepless in Seattle, earned more from that than all the time he could spend running his karate studio. Just a great story. So ideas can be revolutionary, whether you get them from a book, whether you get them from an audio series, whether you glean something from Scott and I or one of our guests. Whatever you're doing, keep yourself focused on learning. I'll tell you, there's not a lot on the radio that's going to help you. So turn off your radio, make your car your university of success.
Yeah. And I always think about, we talked about the one up theory with Anthony Iannarino last week. And I think it's important for us to be able to have people in our lives who are one up. We are one down. And to have a mentor says, I'm one down, and I want to hang around people that are one up. And when you hang around mentors, and in every industry, I'm sure there's a mentor that you can seek out and ask, do you mind if we spend a little bit of time together each week? I really want to learn a lot from you. And if you're willing to share some of your experiences and advice with me, I want to be able to listen and apply it. Would you be willing to make that commitment? And I'm sure most of the people that you talk to are going to say yes. And I've said this quote before. I really love this quote. And that is, you cannot change the people around you. You can change the people around you. So pick people around you that are going to support your growth, your change, because when you have people around you that don't want you to grow and change, because they're going to be left behind and you are going to outgrow them. And it's like crabs in a bucket. They just keep pulling each other down when they try to get out. So really surround yourself with good people.
All right. And then number 38, fuel your success with passion and enthusiasm. Scott, I'll let you lead on that.
Yeah. I heard a great quote from David Sandler many, many years ago. He says, enthusiasm is contagious. It makes everyone sick. And that's how some salespeople come across, as overly enthusiastic. And that causes people's guard to go up. And people get really suspicious when somebody is overly enthusiastic. So be cautious about that, but be cautious about what is the why underneath what I am doing. And that is a line out of the book. What is the why underneath what am I doing? And when you really identify with your why, that's your motivation. And when you're passionate and you're enthusiastic about your motivation and you're committed, like they talk about in chapter 35, now you are a mission. And you are a missile on a mission, and you are striving for your target. And that's where we really need to be.
I think passion is important, but I really get tired of this follow your passion stuff.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Mike Rowe, the guy who does Dirty Jobs, has a real good talk on, should you follow your passion or follow something that's going to actually make you some money?
Right.
And I think colleges are teaching people to follow their passion right off a cliff.
Yeah.
So be careful that you don't follow your passion. And the interesting thing was Jack Canfield used his son, Cool Kyle, as an example, who was a rapper. Yeah. I think maybe San Francisco so I looked him up. He's nowhere to be seen. His website is gone, and he followed his passion. So apparently he changed his passion when he needed to make some money. So, there's nothing wrong with doing something, trying things, going for that 3 months across Europe. But there's some point in there where you're going to have to do something that provides value to other people. And so be careful that you're not just following your passion off a cliff, but whatever you do it with energy and do it with enthusiasm.
Yeah, I've seen marriages end because somebody follows their passion. And it's like, that's not the deal that we made when we started getting together here. And it causes a tremendous angst within that relationship. So when you are married and you are committed to somebody else, you got to be able to agree on major changes in life. And sometimes following the passion doesn't pay the bills. And there's a time for that. And it might be in the second half of your life, but look forward to that. But know that there are some things that you have to do in order to survive and pay the bills.
But I do think when you do find something that you're going to do, you've got to put energy into it. You've got to put drive into it. You can't wander through aimlessly hating what you do either. So I think there's some balance there that you've got to find.
Right. I totally agree with that as well.
All right. So that is the book for the week. Jack Canfield's The Success Principle. Next week, we're going to move, I think, on to part 3, but we'll get into that in the summary, exactly what chapters we're going to do. This segment is being brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, Your Guide to Get in the Door by Steve Kloida.
I'm Ron Lehman, and I want to tell you about one of the best sales books I've ever read. The Art of Prospecting, Your Guide to Get in the Door, gives you the tools and techniques to fill your pipeline and achieve more sales success. The author is Steve Kloida, known as the prospecting expert, and this book proves it. So if you want to learn from the master, get The Art of Prospecting, Your Guide to Get in the Door. It's available at theprospectingexpert.com. Just click on the Buy Book button.
All right, our topic today is on call planning, preparation for making calls, and these can be different types of calls. You might be just cold calling people. You might be preparing for an appointment. You may be following up on a proposal. We talked a lot about follow-up in a previous episode, and if we're not following up on an email, on a proposal, on an appointment that we had, on a clear future that we talked about in one of our conversations with a prospect, then we are really not exercising that commitment. We're not demonstrating credibility, and we're not delivering value, because prospects define value by a salesperson's persistence in the solution that they offer, confidence in the product that they have, and a commitment to a prospect's better future, a better outcome, because everything that a prospect does in change is met with the expectation they're going to get better results, greater results. So how can we follow up on our promises and prepare our calls so that they're not a waste of time? We're not just touching base. We're just not checking in, and we're really determining the goal of the phone call. We're moving the ball down the field, and we know which calls are the most important ones to make during the day. And that's with the help of a CRM, because we want to be able to move the ball that's closest to the end zone first. And we want to be able to put that ball across the line and still work on the other ones that are farther down the field that have a longer sales cycle, but we need to continue to move forward with every single one of them. So this topic has a lot of variations, Bill, and I really want to talk about some of the questions that sales people should be thinking about, and then some of the answers they should be seeking with those questions that they come up with. And I think the first question is, what is the goal of the call? Is it to make a sale? Is it to find the person in the company? Is it to understand the decision-making process? Is it to follow up on an order that somebody placed? Is it to get more information about the company? Is it to follow up on an email or follow up on a voicemail, et cetera? And I think that's the beginning of it, Bill. What are some of the things that you think about when it comes to preparing for calls?
Well, I got to tell you, Scott, first of all, I very much separate follow-up calls from cold calls. I don't mix them. I don't do them at the same time. Chances are I'll start with follow-up calls because it gets me rolling with people I already know. Sometimes I'll call somebody I already know just to get my calling finger going and have a brief conversation with somebody I know. But when I'm making cold calls, I want to be staying in the same script, in the same idea path, and knowing what I'm doing. So I for those, I don't do a whole lot of prep. I know the company, I know a little bit about what they do. Hopefully I've got their name from somebody else, so I'm doing a warm call, but I have the same goal on each of those calls. I can't go through a call, especially cold calling, and have a different goal for every call that I'm making.
I totally agree.
It's too confusing. So I really have to separate follow-up calls, client reminder calls, all those other calls from my cold calling. Now, the number one thing that I have to do, two things. Number one, I have to block it. I have to block time off. It's a calendar appointment. I like to do an hour at a time, but it's a blocked appointment. So from 9 to 10 o'clock, I have it in my appointment. Appointment's going to come up and say, call time. So that's one important thing. And then the second thing, I don't do research during call time. All that research is done another time. I can't make a phone call, then do a little bit of research and find the next person I'm going to call. I have that list of 20 names already set up and ready to go. And then I can be productive. But if I'm trying to do a little research, find a new name, find somebody else, I'll get lost and I'll get 2 calls done in that hour. So research, have everything ready, have it in whether it's in your CRM or whether it's in a book or however you want to organize it, get everything together, and then you start making those phone calls. You make the notes immediately from what happened on that phone call. I left a message, no answer, whatever that is. So you can move that to the next day or maybe that afternoon's calling. But it's organization is going to keep you moving forward with those calls. And so for me, a big part of that call planning is doing that research early and blocking the time.
I think it's a great idea. And I know you've been making calls for a very long time. And that's great advice for our listeners and I call it a rush hour or a power hour, and schedule 2 hours a day, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, where all you do is you make phone calls. And I think you will be amazed how many phone calls you can get done in 1 hour when you prep for them, like Bill talks about, and commit to them, and don't get distracted by anything. Don't be checking LinkedIn or Facebook or your email or any research. Realistically, folks, 20 to 25 calls in an hour. And if you think about committing 2 hours a day, that's 50 phone calls a day. That's a lot of phone calls. That's planting a lot of seeds. And granted, if you get into conversations, wonderful. So you might only make 15 because you got into a couple conversations. Well, that's the goal too. But if you don't commit to the time and the practice, you're never going to get to those conversations, and you're going to get bogged down with distractions. Every time I work with somebody on what are your goals, how are you going to get there? And I'll say, what are the distractions that are going to prevent you from getting there? And if they don't plan for the distractions, they don't recognize the distractions, they can't manage the distractions. We need to really think about that every time that we're making calls. You talked a little bit about prep time, Bill, and I think that this is an area where salespeople can get lost in a black hole of information. How much prep do I need to do? How much realistically, how much prep do you need to do for a cold call? And I'll say under 5 minutes. Number one, you got to find the phone number. You got to find the person that you want to be able to talk to, and a little bit about the company as to what they do. You don't spend 30 minutes researching a cold call. You know enough about what you offer, what a perfect fit is. You need to find out the person, the phone number, and a little bit about what makes that company unique within that industry, and call, but don't get caught up on a lot of research before you even have a conversation. The person that you're calling may be gone. The company may be closed. They may have changed directions completely, and all of your research is a waste of time. You research after you get a prospect that's curious and interested in what you offer. That's when you deliver the research and to be able to deliver something that's relevant to them.
Yeah, I think the research that you do is for the appointment, not for the cold call.
Yeah.
So what I want to do, the research I want to do on the cold call is to make sure that person exists. So I might go through a business. I might start with a business directory of some kind that gives me a company, the name, the list. And then I'll, especially if it's a public company, then I'll go online and I'll look up that company's website. And usually I'll look at the first place I'll look is the About Us, and look for the executive team and see if the list that I have or the names that I had on the research was the same as the list that's coming up that's really there on their website. And then I look for whether it's the CEO or the president or the head of sales, depending on who I want to talk to. Then I'll pick that name out. I'll read a little bit about them in their bio and make a note or two, and then I'm ready for the next one to research. So I think what you said, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes to really make sure that person exists, and then move on.
Yeah. I think one thing that's really, really important when you're making phone calls is active listening. Active listening is the most powerful sales skill you can ever master. If you don't, the questions don't matter. I mean, no matter what questions you ask, if you do not have active listening, it doesn't really matter what you ask, because you're not listening to the answers. And if you don't listen to the answers, you cannot create follow-up questions. One thing that's going to take a lot of pressure off of you making cold calls or follow-up calls or any kind of call is questions, prepared questions. When we do not have prepared questions, our stress increases, our creativity goes down. If you have prepared questions, you can concentrate on listening. You can pick a question that you're going to ask to follow up based on what they shared with you, and you can continue to move down the sales funnel, get down to, start with the intellectual and get down to the emotional reasons on why somebody wants to change. But you really have to be able to apply active listening. I can't stress that enough. It's the most important skill any salesperson should master.
Well, I think too, what is your offer? What is it you're offering somebody? What are they going to get for meeting with you? And Anthony Iannarino talked about this a lot in being a one-up salesperson. And that is that you need to go in with some kind of offer, some kind of value that you're bringing. We talked about that in the past on the follow-up call, that you need to be bringing value. Well, you need to be bringing value on your original call. Hey, I want to talk to you about what we've done for other companies is not that compelling. And so what Anthony talks about is an executive briefing. Here's 4 key trends that are happening in your industry, or something that you can take and provide value. Throw out your company pitch. Nobody gives a damn about your company pitch. It's not that good, and it's nothing but chest pounding, and you're probably going to turn them off more than you're going to turn them on. So have some kind of an executive briefing to bring value, get questions started, and see where those questions take you, and have some, as Scott said, prepared questions for that appointment. But what are you talking about? What are you offering them that makes them want to say, sure, I'll get together with you?
Yeah, what's in it for them? I mean, we've all heard that before. And if we don't pique their curiosity and interest on what they can learn from spending time with us, then we're not being very effective as a salesperson. The most precious, perishable asset is time. And how you trade your time is the same question that prospects ask themselves every single day. How am I going to trade my time? And the goal is to make good time trades. So you as a salesperson have got to be able to deliver value and make good time trades as to who you're talking with. And the prospects have to make good time trades with who they're talking to. And the salespeople that are going to bring them information that's relevant in today's marketplace within the industry that those companies operate in is going to be the most valuable asset that they're going to be able to have. And that's information that they can use to be able to manage their business for a greater, better outcome. And you can be the vehicle to deliver that advice and suggestions. And all of our listeners have brilliant ideas. You have $1 million ideas for your clients. I know that. And when you talk to the right person and you share your $1 million idea, you know the feeling that it gives you. It's a tremendous fulfillment. It's a win. And that's what we live on every single day, are wins. And I know when I'm not having a good week and I think about why am I just feeling kind of down and melancholy right now? It's because I have not had enough wins this week and I need to go out and make some wins. And sometimes when I pick up the phone and I'm talking to people that I don't know and I'm sharing my sales skills, practicing active listening, it's very rewarding when I talk to somebody who I've created interest and curiosity with that makes me feel valuable because I can deliver something to them that makes their life better. That's a win for me. And that's my personal intrinsic motivation, is when I make a difference and an impact on somebody's life because of something that I'm able to do.
Right. And that's the difference between, hey, I'm just making a bunch of phone calls, to I'm trying to build a business here. I want to provide value to these people. And when I get hold of somebody, I know how I'm going to provide value. So don't just be a phone caller and be trying to get through that list. Be trying to achieve something with those calls that you're creating that day.
Yeah. Great topic, Bill. I think it's something that salespeople know that they need to do, but sometimes they get a little stale and it gets a little mundane to do calls. But if we kind of jazz it up, we need to bring it with us. And we're not going to, if we don't bring it with us, we're not going to find it there.
Yeah. And be ready when they actually answer.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
that's
shit.
That's the funny part, because we get into calling and leaving messages, and all of a sudden we get somebody on the line and we're shocked. So be ready when that actually happens. So I do have a resource that I want to include. It'll be at winningatselling.com. It's a blog, Why Most Company Pitches Are Ineffective. So I think you'll enjoy that blog. Anything for you, Scott?
Yeah, I don't. I'll offer something, a surprise.
Go to
our show notes at winningatselling.com, and I'll have a surprise resource there. But
sometimes Scott and I surprise ourselves.
Yeah. Bill's blog is very relevant, and I know how important relevant information is in today's marketplace. So do check that out, winningatselling.com.
All right, and our golden nugget for today as we wrap up is by Norman Vincent Peale. It's always too soon to quit.
Oh, brilliant. It's very, very relevant on today's topic of commitment.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we need to, especially when we're making calls. I think that's a real challenge sometimes. We always feel like it's not productive. It only takes one to make the whole morning worth it, right? Or the whole day or the whole week sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So don't quit before you get to that next one. As we get ready for next week, we will not have a book club again, so it'll give you 2 weeks to catch up. Our guest, Amy K. Hutchins, her topic is sales brilliance. Go out and get better, one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.